Welcome to the Live Up podcast, where we revisit the movies from our youth to see if they live up. I'm Jess Latterman.
And I'm Amanda Treat. Today we're reviewing a movie I must have seen a dozen times on network television with all of the swears bleeped out. It's 1988's Coming to America, Mother Father.
Is that how they bleeped it?
Oh, yeah. Could I just tell you really quickly what happened? I took this movie out of the library because I couldn't remember what streaming network you said it was on. And I was picking up a bunch of other books at the same time. And the little old lady checking me out was going through the books and the books and the books. And then she went to check the movie, the DVD of Coming to America. And she just goes, "Oh, this can't be right." And I felt like the most
can't be yours.
Middle-aged white suburban lady ever. Oh, this can't be right. Yes, I'm watching Coming to America, lady.
I just love that you still get movies from the library.
Well, in a pinch, you know what? The Boston Public Library has a lot of movies. So there you are.
I mean, take advantage. I think that we probably took this movie out from the library back in the early 90s.
Hey. So I'm going really old school here.
Yeah, very old school. Was it a VHS tape?
No. I can't find a VCR anymore. They don't sell them.
No, they don't.
Kids, a VCR is a device that we used to play.
You had to rewind. Yeah.
We had tapes that we used to put in instead of DVDs, which kids, a DVD is a small disc. Oh my goodness, we're getting off track. All right, Coming to America. Jess, you chose this movie. Did you watch it a lot? Why did we review this movie?
Yeah, I mean, a dozen might not be enough in terms of quantity for how much I've watched this movie. I watched it so much, countless times. It was one of those that was like way up there on the queue, or not the queue, but on the rotation.
Before there was a queue.
Before there was a queue.
There was just a stack of
kids.
Stack of VHS cassettes.
That's right. And I just think that the best for this podcast, like the best movie is one that you've watched or we've watched countless times and remembers liking it, but doesn't remember any of the details about it. And so I was like, this is going to be perfect. And I was so excited to watch this movie.
Nice.
I even was so excited. I called my brother because it's to like check with him, like, hey, because after I watched it, I was like, did we watch this from the library? Did we watch it beeped? And because there were moments, and we'll get to that throughout, that I was like, I don't remember all this cursing, but
I didn't either, but that's because I was watching it on network television. They cut a few things.
Yeah. But the thing that does stick out, and I did watch this, and my brother confirmed for me, we watched this countless times, and it really was all about Eddie Murphy. I mean, I think we went through an Eddie Murphy phase and watched all sorts of things with him in it. So that was the overwhelming memory and why we kept going back to this one. But what were your memories of watching this as a kid, a teen, an adult? I don't know.
It must have been probably like maybe 10 years old-ish onward from, I think they played it on television, or I feel like they played it on television a lot. And at that point, Eddie Murphy, that was like he like owned all of pop culture at that point. He was on SNL, he had his movies, he had his comedy albums, which I did not listen to until way later when it was more appropriate. But yeah, I knew Eddie Murphy from SNL first, I think. For some reason, I remember seeing the Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood skits. I don't know how I was watching those because I wasn't staying up and watching SNL, and they weren't rerunning that during the day. So yeah, I remember him being in it. I remember Arsenio Hall had, he was huge at the time too, because he had his TV show with Bill Clinton going on and playing the saxophone on it. And,
oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was it was a time. What I remember the most from this movie is that those two guys play almost every character in the movie.
I had forgotten about that until I was watching. I was like, oh yeah, that's Eddie Murphy too. Wait, is that Arsenio Hall too?
There was moments rewatching it now where I was like, is that an actor or is that just one of them with like really good makeup again? I read that once they start talking, you're like, oh wait, that's Eddie Murphy again. that Jewish guy in the barber shop is actually just Eddie Murphy again.
Yeah, that one I knew and remembered. That was
Yeah.
classic. But I forgot that the preacher was Arsenio Hall. Not until the credits rolled that I was like, no.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't even notice it during the movie. Yeah.
That while I was watching that scene, I'd forgotten all about that scene, but in my head, I was like, "That's gotta be one of them," but I don't even know which one it is. So
Yeah.
good. But we'll get into, well, as many characters as we can in a little bit. I think my only other very sharp memory of that is when I was in, it had to be elementary or junior high. One of the boys at school really liked yelling, "The royal penis is clean, your highness." Like, that stuck with me, even though that part of the movie would have been cut out in the version I was seeing. But I knew that was somewhere in Coming to America, that like there were naked ladies and they were washing him. Ooh, like,
Right.
the way elementary school kids
Yeah,
react to,
that's
yeah, I
what's
don't know.
that's what's sort of funny because I think I watched it a mix from like renting it from the library and watching it on TV. And I don't think that that part was edited out. So I kind of wonder, probably would be edited out today, I would think.
On television,
Oh,
yeah.
sure. Yeah, on TV, but maybe, I don't know.
Not on an
We were,
airplane, though. They're not cutting anything from airplane movies anymore.
that's true. Yeah, there were a lot of times where I was like sort of reaching for those proverbial pearls to clutch sometimes when I remember like the audience of kids, maybe,
Yeah.
in a way.
Can I
Um,
remind you, about the same time, everyone in my elementary school was listening and could sing all the words to that song, The Humpty Dance,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
with the line about what will tickle your rear. Like, and
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
watching your
That's
face.
true.
You're like, oh yeah, that line. Yeah, we all knew that in 4th grade. Sing along, kids.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so yeah, we were exposed to a lot of stuff that sounded awesome and we had no idea what they were talking about. Or even if we did, we just giggled and let it go. And I don't think we're too screwed up from that.
No,
Maybe a little, but like not,
maybe are we
not a
all
lot.
desensitized in a way? I mean, because there are a lot of times, not just with this movie, but with others that I'm like, oh, this wouldn't really, I'm not sure that this would be like watchable for someone at age 10 today. But really, who cares, right? Like
30
who
years from now, there's going to be a 10-year-old with a podcast. Well, she'll be 40 at that point, but she'll be like, there was this music video, WAP, and everyone made the biggest deal about it. Maybe the whole podcast is about Nicki Minaj music videos.
Right, I know. It's like there's nothing shocking anymore though, I feel like. But
Yeah.
but I guess I feel like who cares at the end of the day? So it had some boobs. It's fine.
Yes.
It's
And
fine.
really, honestly, it's like right at the beginning, easy for a network television to cut that scene out, and doesn't, I don't know, it wasn't like overly sexual. The movie in general, I didn't think was overly sexual.
I think it was more so than I remember. But the movie is not just about bathers cleaning the royal
Yes,
penis though. So
we should probably give a recap.
we should probably get going. We can always talk about that still more, but let's dive in. As we said at the beginning, we're going to review the movie and then we're going to score it from 1 to 10 for whether it lives up to us now as adults and whether it lives up to its intended audience, or I think maybe in this case, maybe it's unintended audience. Because I do kind of think the intended audience might have been adults and we just happened to have seen it a lot when we were younger. That's what I think. But so just really briefly, Coming to America, if just like us, you haven't seen it in 3 decades, and it's possible. It's a fictional prince who's Eddie Murphy, playing Prince Akeem from the fictional country in Africa, Zamunda, and he wants to marry for love. So he convinces his father, the king, who's played by James Earl Jones, to sow his royal oats in America. And
that's the king's words, not the prince's.
That is not the
The
prince's.
amount of time they make James Earl Jones say that phrase just looked uncomfortable for him.
I know. And I mean, what it really is that he's just a man looking for someone to love him just the way he is, like Lord Darcy style. So that's basically the plot. And I think it's part fish out of water, part satire, part rom-com. It has so many comedic layers to it, though. And I kind of felt that also watching it again. But yeah, let me just start also by setting the scene of me now 30 years later going to watch this movie. Total mom of the year here. I decided to sit down and watch it, and my 5-year old was like, "Oh, can I watch, bonus screen time?" So I'm like, "Sure, this movie's amazing. Let's watch
Yeah,
this
so much
together."
fun for a 5-year-old.
And I'm watching it. Like, let him watch the first 20 minutes. And then I was like, "Oh my God." And then as I'm watching it, I'm like, what is this movie rated? And then I look it up, and I was like blown away that it was rated R. And then my wife yells in the next room, "Wait, what's it rated?" And I'm like, "R."
Whoops.
Oops, I'm gonna pause it now.
Sorry, honey. My bad. I didn't look at the cover.
I know, and
'Cause
I had
you don't have a
even
VHS cassette to look at.
I know,
That's the
I did
problem.
nothing to read. I had even when I called my brother, I'd asked him, I quizzed him on it. I said, "If I told you that this was," I was like, "What do you think it's rated?" He's like, "I don't know, PG or something like that." And I'm like, he was a bit blown away too that it was rated R. But what about you? Did you have any
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
semblance or memory of that?
I was watching it on my DVD player, and it went through previews, which was spectacular, and
Oh
it was
my
all
God, that's
previews for Eddie
amazing.
Murphy movies. Like, they did Norbit, if you remember that movie,
Oh yeah.
and, oh, I can't remember what the other one was, and then they did a full out trailer just for Eddie Murphy. It was like a combo of everything Eddie Murphy had ever done combined, and they were like, "If you love Eddie Murphy movies, catch him on Paramount," or whatever I was watching there. And then it cuts to just the giant, "This film has been rated R, restricted." It was like, "What? Whoa,
I
why?"
know.
Like, I've seen this movie as a kid. Why is this rated R? And again, there's a little bit of nudity at the beginning, just boobs, pretty much. And there's pretty much no violence in this, except there's one scene where Samuel L. Jackson, great cameo,
Awesome
shows up
cameo.
and fires a gun at the ceiling, but like not even that threatening. It's more of a like, how is like our comedic duo gonna save the day here? So yeah, it was just like, why is this rated R? It's the profanity.
Yeah, I guess it's just a profanity because I felt like were they harsher raters
Well,
back in
so
1988?
no, there's this actual rule that you can't use. It's, George Carlin went into his like naughty words. What is it? The seven naughty words. You get to say one fuck and have it be rated PG-13. Once you get into the second one, it's R. And this movie has thousands of them.
Yeah, there's a
Like,
lot.
there's
Yeah.
a chorus of people from Queens, New York, leaning out their windows, yelling, "Shut the fuck up," anytime they're out on the street.
Yep.
Just F-bombs left and right. They're not even like threatening. They're just kind of ambient swearing. So there is just
It's
so
just
much
part of the
cursing.
texture.
Yes.
It's definitely part of the
The New
texture.
York flavor that this
Yes.
movie
Yes.
decided to take. And yeah, they very easily could have made it a PG-13 movie, and I have a feeling Eddie Murphy was like, "Nope, keep it. I don't care what it's rated. The kids will see it anyway." And we did.
Meanwhile, they did.
Yes. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so like that was totally Eddie Murphy's vibe at the time. He was raunchy, he had raw, but he also always came through as like the nice guy at the end.
Yeah,
So, and he does here, like, Prince with a heart of gold
I
and
know.
many, many attendants back in his fake Zamunda country. Anyway, though, what do you think of Eddie Murphy as Prince Akeem? You've seen this so many times, but did you have a new take on it watching it as an adult?
I think my new take might be really similar, but just almost like a fine wine, more appreciation for Eddie Murphy. Because, like I said, my overall impression, my memory of it was really wrapped around Eddie Murphy and how funny he was. And then sitting down to watch it again, I'm like, Eddie Murphy's brilliant. He's really funny, and he's even funnier than I could have picked up on as a kid. So, and I was worried sitting down because I loved him so much. I was worried it was going to be dated and cringy, and I was like kind of ready for that. I was like, oh God, I know there's going to be things in here that are just awful, but it mostly landed for me. I mean, of course, it's a little bit dated, but I think he's just a comic delight in this movie, and he's so funny. And like you're totally right, it's raunchy and he drives the raunchiness, but he's also the nice guy and endearing. And one scene that I forgot about then, but as soon as it started happening, I was like, oh my God, I love this line. When he, as Prince, at this point, he is working as a janitor at the McDowell's, which the knockoff McDonald's
Oh,
restaurant.
I love that. I
Love
forgot
it.
about that.
And he has a thing for the owner's daughter, Lisa, and he's really like, pretty much really trying to court her, and but he's pretending to be poor, so he like mops his way into her office and was like, hi, I am Akeem, I have recently been placed in charge of garbage. When you think of garbage, think of Akeem. And like, whatever I just said, I think sounds dumb. Maybe on this podcast it sounds dumb, but it doesn't sound dumb when he says it.
It's awkward, but it's so sweet, and it's kind of like they have a meet cute in her office that even though he sets it up, so I guess it's not a technical meet cute, but yeah, he's genuinely nice, and he's putting on this fake accent from this fake country that doesn't exist, and that's where I was prepared to like, I was ready to cringe, like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, what are we about to do here?" And he's not making fun of anybody. He's really being genuine, but just putting on this made up accent for, I guess, to make it more believable, because otherwise he'd be sounding like Eddie Murphy from New York,
Right.
from SNL. Yeah, no, I thought that was a very kind of sweet scene. And like, she's not a jerk to him, but at the same time, she's also giving him that face like, you're being a little weird. Like, what are
Yeah, a
you
little
doing
bit
in
of
my
creep
office?
vibe.
But it's nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Like, okay, good effort. We're getting along here. So yeah, I agree. I think Eddie Murphy, I remember him like bouncing off the walls in some of his skits on SNL, and he's much more subtle here, I think. Like, he is very relatable and like talks in a way that, he's trying to actually convey like, this is what I'm thinking and this is why I'm doing that, and it's not always a joke. It's genuine, like, I really just want to meet somebody who I like their personality and that we get along and I have respect for her,
Yeah.
which I was
Which is
not
like,
expecting at all from this movie.
but it was also funny in that even though he's a nice guy, there's one part at the beginning where he kind of breaks the fourth wall when he's meeting back in Zamunda. He's meeting the woman who's going to be his or the woman that his parents, the king and queen, have arranged for him to marry. And he like stops the presses and takes her aside into the separate room, and she's all just submissive, like, I like whatever you like. And when he's like, basically he looks at the camera like dead on, and then he starts making her like hop on one foot and bark like a dog. And I will say, like, that point my 5-year-old was still watching with me, and he kind
Ooh.
of thought it was
Oh,
funny.
good.
but
There's
but
In terms of breaking the fourth wall, I don't remember that moment, but there's a moment later when they use the dog to break the fourth wall. Like, the adults in the McDowell's house are doing something silly and the dog just looks at the camera.
oh, that's right. Like, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
Which I thought that was funny. It landed.
It landed, and even though, like, you think like, oh, Prince makes woman hop on foot and bark like dog will be, I was worried it was going to be a cringy scene, but it wasn't. It was still
It
funny.
was just silly.
It was
Yeah.
silly. It was still funny.
So his plot line, this is again Prince Akeem, played by Eddie Murphy. As I was watching it, I realized, wow, Disney completely ripped off this whole movie and gave the plot to Princess Jasmine and Aladdin a couple of years later. Like, it's the same thing. She doesn't want to just marry for political gain, and she sneaks out and goes out and pretends she's not the princess. But like,
Maybe that's why I think it's timeless.
there's similarities in it that I was just, in my head, it was just like, oh my God, is Disney borrowing from Coming to America? Like, did that happen?
Not to mention that James Earl Jones, and I think we'll get to him a little bit, as playing the king. I mean, every time he says "my son," it's very. I kept thinking Darth Vader in a way, but my wife's like, "Oh my God, all I think of is the Lion King."
There's lines that he says in this movie that I think just got like rewritten right into the script of The Lion King. And Madge St. Clair is playing his wife here, and she plays the mom in The Lion King as well.
Oh my
Why am I
God,
blanking on her name? Yeah, no, it's the same parents.
So they
Like,
basically the fictional king and queen of this.
There's some
country.
Disney executive who's been watching Coming to America over and over again. It's like, you know what? The idea of like the royalty sneaking out and pretending to be a commoner and looking for love, that's great. And, ooh, you know what would be really great in that like African movie we're making about a lion with very regal parents. Like, let's just get the parents from Coming to America. They're perfect.
I
And
mean,
give them the same lines.
I think I'd argue that if they should have just cast Eddie Murphy in The Lion King at this point, because I think it would have probably been even better of a movie.
What kind of movie would that have been? Wow.
A better one, I think. So
his version of Hakuna Matata would have been very odd.
It would have been very odd. You're right. Could he even sing? So his buddy in the film, Semi, played by Arsenio Hall, who's also quite funny. Was he everything you remembered him to be? Was he funnier? Was he cringy?
I think he was exactly how I remembered him. Like, he's the sidekick character, so he's a little bit goofier, and he's the fall guy on some of the jokes. He's also the one who can't stand the fact that they're doing this experiment and moving to Queens and pretending to have no money. It's driving him nuts.
I found that to be
I liked him. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, you know what? Who wants to go to work in 1980s Queens in some place filled up by Samuel L. Jackson? Not me.
That's true. Yeah, none of his whining, we'll call it, is out of line. Like, he genuinely came from a palace and has to go live in this bummed out apartment with rats running around in it and a body on the floor when they first arrived. The like outline, there's an outline. Oh God, it's like the last tenant was a blind man, so his outline's on the floor, and then they've done an outline of his walking stick, and then they did an outline of his seeing eye dog.
Yeah.
That to me, I was like, oh, that's a little too much. I don't want to see that. Come on. The landlord says, oh, it's a shame about the dog.
What? Although, I mean, yeah, sure, it's a bit much, but did I laugh? I did. I found it funny.
I was genuinely sad for this fictitious dog, but
yeah, I thought Arsenio Hall was funny, and especially at the end when I realized he was the preacher, which I didn't even like realize in rewatching it. I thought he was funny.
Did you notice him in other roles before the credits? Like as the drag queen or as the guy in the barbershop?
I recognized him in the barbershop, and of course I recognized him in like the most hideous woman ever in the bar.
I think that's what the credits actually called, most hideous woman ever. She doesn't have a name. She's just the most hideous woman ever. Arsenio Hall with lipstick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a little bit, and actually as I was watching that scene, and just so if folks don't remember, there's this, Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy as Semi and Hakeem are basically like, we have to find Hakeem a wife. Let's go to all these bars in Queens. And you just sort of have this montage of these ridiculous women that they're talking to. And they're all they're crazy. They're drug addicts. They're horn dogs. They're all these things. But yeah, Arsenio Hall's then is in drag. Not even great drag. I mean, like it's Arsenio Hall with like no makeup and a wig, I think.
Close, yeah. And they have him seated across the table, so he's like hitting on himself. Like, they keep jumping back and forth across the table. That was kind of funny the way they were doing that.
It was funny, and I think that also you're totally over the top meant to know that that's Arsenio Hall. Like they're not trying to disguise him by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, and I kept thinking though, not to get off track, but for that scene, I'm like, these ladies are not New York's finest.
But like, would you expect to find a wife in a bar in one night of going out in Queens, like bar hopping? Actually, wait, it was meant to be multiple nights though. Like they keep changing. They have like various, not quite Cosby sweaters, but like very unique looking sweaters that they're going out clubbing in.
Yeah.
So I think they went to more than one bar, but yeah, you're not picking up a wife at a dive bar.
Yeah.
In Queens in 1988.
My other favorite thing about Arsenio Hall was that his, I mean, of course, he's like super whiny about being in like a total dump in New York. And when he finally is fed up and basically sends a telegram to the king to basically say, help me and send money. And his exchange with the woman at the telegram office, which also just the idea of sending a telegram, I mean, that's just so ridiculous.
Kids, but a telegram was a way of sending a message before there were texts. You had to go to an office and they would type it up on paper and then kind of text it to another office, put it on paper, and then deliver the paper to your house.
I mean,
old school texting.
I even think you and I are too young for telegrams. Like,
oh God, yeah.
But just that his exchange with the telegram office woman was very funny. Like he's
I thought
asking for
she was
money.
funny. I didn't know who
Yes.
she was, but she reminded me of Gilda Radner.
Yes, she really does. And she's so New York. I mean, I think she's even
Yes.
smoking a cigarette. If she wasn't smoking a cigarette, she might as well have been. And she's like, you want to send this? Do you think it's enough money? Let's go for a cool million. Like she totally eggs him on. And, Arsenio Hall just plays it super naive. And the thing is, I think what's great about the movie, I know we're like now in gushing territory, is that all of this could be dumb. All of this could be over the top. And it's not. It's pretty funny still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about some of the other characters? Because we've talked about
Let's do it.
African side of the cast. We have Sherry Headley, I think is how we say her last name, playing Lisa, who's the love interest. And in looking her up, because it was like she's familiar, she's on like all these television shows. But the fun thing I found on her kind of IMDb page is that she used to be married to Play from Kid and Play.
No.
You remember the
Oh
House
my
Party
God.
movies? We
I
might have
forgot
to
about
do
that.
an episode on House Party, but
Wow.
Oh my God, those haircuts they used to have.
Oh yeah, they're probably back in
amazing.
now.
So awesome. Well done, Sherry.
Very well done. I thought she was just okay. I mean, if I were to say, like, in some ways from a modern sensibility, I think like her character is supposed to be, she's well educated, she's helping her dad run the business, she's at what's called a Black Awareness Night, which we will get to, speaking about raising money for the community. I mean, like, she's supposed to be a modern woman even in 1988, and I think that still translates. But I feel like her character is a bit one note. It was just
she's supposed to be very good and very sweet, doesn't do anything wrong. And yeah, she's a little bland, but she's also like the straight man in
that's
all
true.
of this. There's a lot of chaotic characters going on around her, and
that's super true. Like her sister,
she is trying her best.
Her sister, I think Patrice was her name.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's funny.
She is funny, and I forgot she existed really until I started watching this again. And like her whole younger sister shtick, like, why does she get all the good ones, is pretty funny. I mean,
yeah, no, she just comes flying into all the scenes and she's dancing, she's saying like sassy things and then dashes away. She was a fun character. We have John Amos is playing their dad. He's I remember him as Gordy from the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Oh, that's right.
Sports guy. Yeah, which I was a fan of that show. So
me too.
I still am. And he was on Good Times, and he's in a bunch of other movies, but he's playing Cleo McDowell, the owner of the McDowell's. Kind of looks like a McDonald's, but isn't. And initially, when I saw the restaurant, I was like, oh, they couldn't get clearance on McDonald's, so they're just knocking it off. But then they worked that right into this movie that actually it's this guy is knocking off McDonald's. Yeah, he's even got like the McDonald's like operating manual in his office somewhere, and he keeps hiding it from people.
Yeah.
I think he's a very fun character. Like he is intended to be like a little bit greedy and a little bit opportunistic, but at the same time, you see that he actually just really cares about his daughters, and he's just trying to set them up for a better life than he and his wife had because they worked so hard, I think was what he had said to her. I thought he was hilarious.
I thought he was pretty funny too. And just like, I mean, he's definitely a little bit the setup man too. He invites like Akeem and Semi over for a gathering at his house, but in reality, it's just so Akeem and Semi could just basically work the party as bartenders and valets. Yeah. But so he has like some funny setups there, and I enjoyed him too. I found him to be endearing. He wasn't all about the money, but he certainly had funny lines about it. I mean, he's definitely he's the dad. He's pushing. So not Lisa, like the character Lisa is dating Daryl, who's like the heir to a hair product company.
Oh, God, that's what is it called? Soul Glow.
Soul Glow, so good.
It's and hair gel for.
Yeah, it's.
Oh
and we'll get to that, but I
it's
think
so funny.
It's so funny, but I think Cleo's really like pushing that relationship, obviously, and that's like a key piece of the plot. And at some point at the end, when he finally realizes who Akeem is, he's like shouting, he's like, Akeem makes Daryl look like he's on welfare. And like Elena and I both really laughed at that point. Even though it's like, is it funny that he's making a welfare joke? Actually, it is funny. I'm gonna laugh.
So there's a lot of humor tucked in here where it's like, is it okay for me to laugh at this? Like, I know like Eddie Murphy hand wrote all of these jokes and he is dressed in whiteface sitting in a barber shop calling his own character Kunta Kinte in multiple scenes. And I'm like, ooh, like
I know.
it's hard to call that funny as a white middle-aged suburban lady.
That's the part, those are the parts that I was worried were going to be really cringe, but they kind of weren't for me. Yeah.
They're still good-natured, even though
Yeah.
they are a little
And,
racist.
and the whole Soul Glow thing.
Remember the Jerry curl was like the big hairdo back in the 80s, and I
Yeah.
feel like Eddie Murphy's just making fun of that. Like,
Right.
if
He's making
nothing
fun of
else gets picked on in this movie, he's making fun of Jerry curls.
he is. And I obviously as like a 10-year-old didn't pick up on like that kind of like satire, if you will. I just thought that like it's supposed to kind of look silly and greasy and like they're leaving grease stains on the couch because of their hair, and it was still kind of funny.
Yeah, the
Almost in a different
the
way.
fake commercial for the Soul Glow hair
Oh my
product
God.
was so fun. The song with that falsetto in the background,
Go, glow.
everyone's just like eyeing the camera sexually, like, ooh, I've got Soul Glow in my hair. It's just
I
so over the
know.
top. It's
So
fantastic.
over the top. And then like basically like the two people in the fake commercial are basically naked and they start making out and there's like tongues everywhere. And like it's like they're making out for just long enough that it's weird.
And it looks like, because it doesn't look like they're in any situation, like they look like they're in a photo studio at the mall.
They do.
Filming this commercial. It's weird and funny. Yeah, I did laugh at that.
I did laugh at that. And
Actually, can we talk about poor Eric LaSalle as
yes,
Daryl? Because he's
yes.
such a good actor, and this character is like the butt of so many jokes. And his outfits are ridiculous.
They're
Like that thing at the basketball game he's wearing. I can't tell if it's a coat or a sweater, but it's got fringe coming out left and right, like leathery fringe. It's so weird. Yeah, poor
I think I put
Eric
in my
LaSalle.
notes that generally speaking, the fashion was very floofy. I mean, I don't even know if that's a word, but it's like everything was very floofed and it just seemed very 80s.
Yes.
I sort of forgot that the guy from ER was in this movie.
I know. By the time he's in ER, you're like, oh, I love this doctor. Like, I don't want anything bad.
He was a great
to this nice
character.
doctor. And then you see him playing Daryl in this movie, and you're like, ew, Daryl. Ew.
Yeah.
The
Daryl
heir to the Soul Glow fortune. Ugh.
Yeah. And he plays like a quintessential prick. I mean, it's somewhat of like a classic character trope of like, if this movie were set in high school, he would probably be like the quarterback or something that bullied people. Like he's sort of like stereotypical, had everything handed it to him, but he pretends to be an alpha male, I guess.
Yeah, no, he's definitely being smarmy. He's being a jerk to Hakeem, and he's not particularly nice to Lisa starts off as his girlfriend. He's not very nice to her. And anytime he has to take any sort of action at all, he's kind of a wuss when it comes down to it. And they talk about like, he just inherited all this money from his dad and he's coasting off of that. And yeah, he's just a foil really for showing you how hardworking Akeem is being versus how lazy and disingenuous and smarmy the rich guy is. So once again, the rich guy. Ugh.
Yeah, I know it's always fun to make fun of rich people. I feel like that's a theme in a lot of the movies we've watched.
Yeah.
But he definitely has a role to play in the plot. And I kind of feel like his big fuck up is, he basically stages like at the gathering at the house when at the McDowell house, he basically makes an announcement with Daddy Cleo to say that he and Lisa are engaged, and in which case he is not actually proposed, and she's pissed, and that sort of ends their relationship essentially. So basically the whole movie happens because Daryl done fucked up. I mean, that essentially, which is like a little neat and tidy. I think watching that as an adult, I was like, you prick.
Oh yeah. I'd forgotten that scene, but just
I did too. Yeah.
I've read on, like, you see on, like, Reddit and stuff, like, people complaining, like, "Am I the asshole for breaking off this engagement that I didn't agree to?" And it's like, "Nope, shouldn't
Nope.
do that."
Nope. Yeah.
Nobody watched Coming to America on this thread.
Yeah, I had forgotten that entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to
It
say I had forgotten just the whole idea of arranged marriages entirely when I was like my memory as a kid. Like I know that that's like the whole point of the movie, but I just sort of a little bit skated over my head, I guess, at age 10, maybe
mm,
when I was watching this.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think I don't know if there's other characters we want to get to.
I don't think we need to take a deep dive other than to just call out that this movie has a lot of people in early roles who
Oh
go
yeah.
on to show their full awesomeness. We mentioned Samuel L. Jackson shows up with a gun and a ton of profanity because it's Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, "Oh my god, he's in this." I forgot about that for a minute, but it's still so quintessential Samuel L. Jackson. It's great.
It is. It's actually kind of classic within like his 2-minute scene. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you would expect from a cameo of Samuel L. Jackson. And then, they've got on the fry cook line, Louis Anderson,
I had
who
forgotten he was in this. Yeah.
he barely has any lines, he's barely in it, he's just kind of flipping burgers in the background, but it's like, wow, like, I'm sure he was really good friends with Eddie Murphy, but it was funny to see him looking so young and just
Yes.
floating around in the background of this restaurant. And then randomly, it's so obviously him, but the first shot of the barber shop, Cuba Gooding Jr. is sitting in the chair getting his hair cut. He only has one line, but it's like, "Hey, everyone, Oscar winner, Cuba Gooding Jr.
I
getting a
know.
haircut."
I know. He had to have been like a teenager or younger in that. Yeah. His face is the same though. I know. I looked at him right away. I think I was like staring at him on the screen, like, what's Cuba Gooding Jr. doing in this movie?
Like, oh, fun to see all of them really young. And then we probably could talk a little bit more about James Earl Jones
Oh,
because
sure.
he was huge. He's still huge, but in the 80s. I mean, do you remember he used to do the voice of like the phone when you picked it up and dialed?
No. What are you talking about?
For a couple of years there, he was the voice of AT&T. And
Oh, this is
kids,
vaguely familiar.
before cell phones, we used to have phones that connected to our walls, and they were called landlines.
Oh my god.
You'd pick up the
Yeah.
phone and to make a phone call to someone else's landline, and he was there going AT&T. And it was,
Oh, that's right.
remember that?
I totally forgot about that. He's Darth Vader to me.
He's
He was
Darth
also
Vader. And
yeah,
he was Field of Dreams,
Field of
which I'd seen
Dreams.
before this movie.
Yeah, which, I think Field of Dreams came out later or
Oh,
right
did
maybe
it?
right no, it
I
might have
know I
been right
saw
around
it
the same time.
first.
Even, my wife had pointed this out, there's when James Earl Jones is, like when his character is, like, going to New York to basically be like, "What the fuck's going on here?" He comes out of his limo and he's wearing this giant lion skin, and that's like, "Oh my god," that's, like, definitely you're totally right that some Disney exec is like, "We have now found our our
This
dad for our Lion King movie."
I'm picturing this Disney exec was, like, drinking and woke up, and this movie was playing on
Playing on
network
TBS.
television as it did repeatedly, and that this executive had a hangover and just saw James Earl Jones draped in the lion and was like, "Yes, that's who my lion will be."
But I think with a lot of these movies that we remember liking as kids and that are enjoying, and we obviously we're enjoying this movie. The cast is really just outsized for what the movie is. I mean, this is just a silly
Yes.
comedy, and the cast is great. And James Earl Jones is fantastic in this. He has gravitas. He's funny. He's ridiculous. He's all the things.
I almost think he and Madge St. Clair have, like, too much gravitas for this movie, like, they are such esteemed actors.
Maybe
Like,
they're too good to be king and queen of Zamunda.
well, they're too good to be the butt of the joke, which for the
That's
most
true.
part they weren't, but, like, there's that moment where the queen gets stuck in a lazy boy chair, and I just was like, "Oh, don't do that to her." Like, nobody puts Madge St. Clair in the corner. Like, it just felt uncomfortable to me, and it was a little uncomfortable every time James Earl Jones, and we hinted at this earlier, he keeps using the phrase like, "Oh, Akeem's going to go sow his royal oats." And he
Yeah.
says it with this kinda, like, little eyebrow raise,
Yeah.
kinda creepy, and it just is not the James Earl Jones that I want to see. I don't know, like I expect him to be like so like serious with such dignity, and like there's moments in this movie where it's like, oh no, don't take him down a peg and make him like say all that. Ew. Like
Yeah, I mean, some of it was still gross. Like when he was like, I just assumed you had sex with your bathers. When this is when James Earl Jones is the king is talking to Prince Akeem about, basically like, oh, you don't want to get married. That must mean you've never had sex. Well, of course you've had sex with your bathers. They clean your penis. Like, I think that's where the logic goes. Yeah, that was the only line. You're totally right. From someone like James Earl Jones felt like a little cringe.
yeah, it just was a little mismatch for my brain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was. It is a little bit of a mismatch. So one thing that was surprisingly not a mismatch, like when I did that there with my segue.
Ooh, hey, nice one.
Nice.
Smooth, smooth.
Yeah. So I have thoughts about Queens in the 1980s. I did not grow up in Queens. I grew up on Long Island, but my parents live in Queens now.
And to
And
clarify, this is Queens, New York, not the Queen of Zamunda that we were just talking about as a
oh
character.
yes,
We're on the
to clarify,
geographical location, although that is a joke in this movie.
it is. And
But go on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on New York.
I kind of wondered, even in 1988, do people outside of New York like? I mean, they must find this joke funny because the idea that Queens is the place to go for a royal bride is just it's still funny. I mean, even in the year of our Lord 2023. So I have a lot of notes that I'm like, oh my God, all the garbage on the street. Oh my God, it's so gross. But I gotta say, it still looks like that, Amanda. Like I think
Really?
I
I
feel
haven't
like
been to
not the trash on the
Queens
street. And
maybe ever. I don't know if I've been to Queens.
I realize my relatives are going to be listening to this, and I could see like up in arms
She
already.
loves
But
you. Just make sure there's no trash in front of your house.
yeah, it's not just the trash. It's just like Queens looks a little gloomy. The architecture is a little gloomy. It's just not pretty. And so if you're going to pick a place to be super gritty and gross, Queens is like the place. And my thought is that it ain't that different in the year
Wow.
2023.
Amazing.
I mean, crime, yeah, like all of that is different, obviously, but it just struck me that it wasn't like you're watching a movie that takes place in Manhattan and in the 80s, and Manhattan's a dump or something, where or the 70s, like where that is not the case today. I kind of feel like Queens still looks like this. And
Perfect.
yeah, and I just think that the depiction of the New Yorkers was over the top, but really funny. I mean, the whole thing was funny. Like when Akeem is on the subway, he's trying to chase Lisa down, and he's like confessing his love, and everyone in the subway looks up and is like totally there for the
I
the
really
shit
love
show.
that part too. I love that the just bystanders on the subway are like totally like eating popcorn, watching this
I
conversation go
know.
down, and then get involved at a certain point. Like, go on. Like,
Like I know. So there was stuff like that that I thought was very New York and very funny, and still like that, if you will.
there were definitely parts of the way New York was portrayed that was like gritty but charming. Like,
Right.
and
And
I think that was my impression of New York in the 80s, which was entirely based on seeing it in movies. Like we'll eventually get to the Ninja Turtles movie, but their version of New York is gritty, maybe less charming in places.
yeah,
But yeah, it was a pre-Giuliani cleanup New York.
it was. I mean, of course it's exaggerated and ridiculous, but it definitely serves as the foil for beautiful castle going to like a shitty neighborhood in Queens, and I have to say, watching it when they first arrive in Queens with all of their ridiculous luggage that they leave outside, like I still have anxiety when they walk away from their luggage and go
Oh, you
inside.
know
I'm like
what's gonna
I'm like, don't
happen.
leave the luggage. It's gonna disappear.
And then I love, like, a few scenes later, you see, like, the homeless men standing around the trash can fire, and they're all, like, decked out in
In the
robes,
floofy
and
clothes.
yeah, like, everyone in this neighborhood dresses beautifully now because 'cause they've stolen all the clothes from the
Right.
prince, like,
Well,
fantastic.
speaking of homeless people, I totally forgot to mention this. You had picked up on this too about the random cameos from
Yes.
Trading Places.
Yes, so this movie was directed by John Landis, who also directed Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, and, oh god, what are their names? Mortimer and
Mortimer and
oh, I'm blanking on it. Don't call me out. But yes, the two men from the end of Trading Places are sleeping in a pile of trash and receive a bunch of money from Prince Akeem, who's trying to get rid of his slush funds there. And
Right.
you see them like with each other, they're like, we're back. And it's like, oh no, have we extended into the Trading Places universe and these two bad characters from that movie are suddenly like off to cause trouble again?
I thought that was kind of funny. And
it was a fun cameo.
It was a fun cameo. I mean, I think one where I'm gonna guess more people probably are attached to Coming to America, and that might just go over their heads if you've never seen that movie. But this movie, at least at home for me, was in heavy rotation with Trading Places. I mean, we watched both of these movies because we loved Eddie Murphy. We watched both of these movies all the time. So I remember loving that scene. As
Trading
a kid,
Places is a fantastic movie too.
It is.
Yeah, we'll have to do that one.
We'll have to do that one too.
And I feel like John Landis, like another director who was more slapsticky, would have been like leading this movie in the wrong direction. I feel like he held the line between like, it is very funny and there's a lot of edgy stuff going on here, but it's also very like kind and like pleasant to watch, and children will be watching this movie and learning a lot of bad words apparently. But he also directed Animal House, he did Blues Brothers, he did Three Amigos, and like a ton of other things. But he also did the Thriller music video.
Oh, that's right. I knew that. I think I watched a whole documentary about him directing the Thriller music video. Oh, wow.
And he did Michael Jackson's Black or White video, which premiered on a Sunday night after, I think it was like between The Simpsons and In Living Color, or maybe after In Living Color. But I remember like everyone gathered around their televisions to watch the live premiere of Michael Jackson's Black or White.
I totally remember that.
Yeah. So
right now it would just be like out on the tickety talk. And could we sound more old? I don't know.
The tickety talk sounds pretty old. Get off my lawn with your tickety talk.
Yeah. So I think, I just wanted to bring up like that. I felt like 1980s Queens just sort of felt like still holds. Sorry, entire borough and my family members, but it's not
I love the scene where they essentially, they're just trying to pick anywhere in the world to go to look for a wife, and they spin a globe and land on America and then focus in on New York, and then they see the word Queens and look at each other and they're like, Queens, we're gonna go find a queen in Queens. Like they're so excited about it. Like it's just the excitement in Prince Akeem's character in many scenes just pulls off. Like I think there's a lot of jokes that without that level of energy and enthusiasm, it would be like, that's silly, but like they're so excited they're going to Queens.
Yeah. So were there any things that were just straight up cringy to you?
I think it's really the James Earl Jones being a little too sexual for my childhood brain, or my adult brain thinking back that, oh my God, my childhood brain saw this. And then I think it's all funny, but it's very hard for me to call a lot of the racial humor funny.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I'm just awkwardly, uncomfortably chuckling as I'm saying it.
Akeem first meets or sees Lisa. It's at this rally / I'm not sure what to call it. This like community gathering for, I think it's Black Awareness Week is what they call it. And I think, I mean, again, we're two middle-aged white ladies talking about this, but I do think the humor intent is to be a send up of this at the time. Basically, you have the preacher character played by Arsenio Hall gets on stage to do a musical. Oh no, not the preacher character. There's the preacher character himself who was like
there's the preacher,
gross.
And there's the soul singer.
The soul singer, Randy Jackson, Randy Watson. And he was from Sexual Chocolate. And he like sings and it's an awful song and it's terrible and it's so cringy. But it's supposed to be cringy. But like a lot of times I'm just like, I'm just like itching to grab for my like clutch my pearls moment with him. That not really more for like the Sexual Chocolate awkward singing. But there's definitely, there's still some jokes around that are funny. Asterisk, she says softly. So Hopefully we don't get hate mail for this, but but it's funny, or is it just sort of an interesting piece of the times that maybe as a white 10-year-old living in the suburbs, I didn't even pick up on?
Yeah, I think it wasn't our experience at the time, but
Yeah.
I feel like Eddie Murphy is taking a shot at somebody in his life or somebody he's seen. I don't know who it is, but that felt like a little bit personal, like the way he's got the preacher character and the way he's got the soul singer.
It's supposed to be over the top. I mean, the
Yeah,
whole sexual chocolate thing, the floofy outfit is supposed to be over the top. But it I think it borders on cringe a little bit.
it does,
Um,
yeah. One thing that I get I mean, it's awesome, but also I'm like, they have too much gravitas for this. The opening credits, as I was listening to it, was, and they're like zooming in on the palace that the movie starts at the palace setting. But when I was listening to it, I was like, this sounds like the band that sang with Paul Simon on Graceland. Like, what is it? I Googled it and it was like, oh my God, it's Ladysmith Black Mambazo. What are they doing in this movie? Like, Grammy winning, like, iconic
yeah.
singers. I don't know, like a beautiful song. It's a Lion Sleeps Tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, it stuck out to me too of like a little on the nose. It felt like a little too on the nose, I
Did
think.
that drunk Disney exec steal that too?
Maybe.
Oh
Oh my
my
God. You know
goodness.
what? I wonder if some drunk Disney exec saw this movie and that's how he came up with the idea
I
for doing The Lion King in
I
animated
think
form.
there was a hangover involved, and it was a Sunday morning, and just clicked on the television, and there was Coming to America, and this
Yep,
guy said, "That's it, The
that's
Lion
it.
King, I've got it."
And the only mistake this exec made was not casting Eddie Murphy as well, I
Mm.
think.
That would have made it way more obvious where the source material was coming from.
Yeah. The only other one thing, like the McDowell's McDonald's thing, I mean, the jokes I thought were funny between the two of them. But then I was wondering, like, McDonald's was like a BFD, I feel like when we were kids. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved going to McDonald's. I mean, I don't anymore as an adult. I don't really go to McDonald's after high school. I never went again, I don't think. So I kind of wonder whether like that joke would resonate today because right now there's by resonate today, I mean like amongst, and we haven't even talked like the intended audience here, who the hell knows, but there's all sorts of burger joints that are knockoffs of burger joints, and like we all kind of accept it nowadays, like
I
all the
feel like
vegan places and the
I
whatever
think
it is.
McDonald's is so iconic, though. I mean, the buildings have that very specific shape, and so does this McDowell's. It's clearly being filmed in a McDonald's with, like,
I
just
know it is.
a
That's
little
what's
bit of
funny.
signage changing, and, like, they've done an imitation of the golden arches, which are so iconic for McDonald's, and, like, the Happy Meal looks like I mean, everything in that just echoes McDonald's so closely, and I think the McDonald's brand is so universal
That's
that
true. I'm
it
not saying that
it
nobody
would
goes there
still it
anymore.
would still land. I
It
think
would
that
still
joke would still
land,
land.
yeah. I guess my perception of 1988 was that McDonald's and was, like, the only fast food place in a way for that sold burgers, at least from my memory of it,
Yeah, me
so,
too.
yeah. So and I feel like nowadays there's more choice in it, I don't know. It was still funny, the jokes were still funny, but I was just wondering, like, is there another brand that could possibly other than McDonald's, that could have ever pulled this off to make it funny? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
You could maybe do a Burger King or
maybe.
like remember you Jess and I have both spent some time living in Australia. Did you ever go to a Hungry Jack when you were in Australia,
Oh
which was
god.
Burger King, but like they didn't have the license for Burger King, so they call it Hungry Jack?
I feel like I remember them being there, but I don't remember not specifically.
Because the first time I went in one, it was kind of like this McDowell's McDonald's situation. I was like, this feels like a Burger King, but it's a Hungry Jack. What is happening here? Found out later, like, oh, okay, it was a Burger King. It just has a different name, but
Different name.
and the water goes down the sink in the opposite direction because it's Australia. Something's a little off in this Hungry Jack. Does Burger King know about this?
I kind of wonder whether McDonald's like, I mean, they must have loved this movie. I mean, I know we're talking about like a brand, but I think in some ways, like they're almost a character in the movie.
Yeah, no, it insinuates that Cleo McDowell is hiding this restaurant from McDonald's, and he's just so paranoid that McDonald's is going to find out that he's knocking them off.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, the whole knockoff thing is funny. And like my brother, who I talked to right before right after I saw the movie, he actually worked in a McDonald's too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, maybe that's why my perception of like, well, isn't that the only burger place?
Did
um,
he give you free burgers when he worked there? Or
oh God,
free Happy Meal toys?
I honestly probably didn't trust him to give me a
Oh,
burger, to be honest. So
bummer.
bummer.
Like he licked the bread
Right,
kind of
exactly,
situation. Yeah. Your brother
exactly.
would too, actually,
Yeah, probably. There'd
knowing
be
your
some
brother
spit in my
Jeremy.
soda. Yeah. So pass.
Smart decision. Smart
Yeah, I think
decision.
so.
Hey, you knew there was a sequel that came out during the pandemic to this movie, right?
So like I don't know, that piece of information like fell into a black hole for me. Like I vaguely remember that. I haven't seen it though. I watched the
I haven't
trailer for it.
either.
It looks terrible.
In the same way I was worried that this movie was not gonna live up and like, "Oh god, is it gonna be cringy?" I feel like the sequel definitely will be cringy and will ruin my childhood memory of this movie.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just leave it be as
Yeah.
is. Because I think, yeah, of course, there's always reboots and sequels that are great. There's the whole Star Wars franchise, if you will. I was like,
That
I
one
don't
has both great and awful cringy with the Star
right,
Wars reboots.
but they've been successful, right? So I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna let it be. I'm just gonna let Eddie Murphy from 1988 live in my mind here and not age him. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So are we ready to score this?
Sure.
All right. So I think this is going to score pretty well. So with all this in mind, so now we're going to score the movie for how did it live up to us as adults. So a score of 1 to 10. 1 is garbage. 10 is Princess Bride. What you got for me, Treat?
As an adult, and I was ready to sit through a total cringe fest with this movie, and it wasn't, so that was fantastic. I'm gonna go an 8. Again, I feel like I give a lot of movies an 8 as an adult, but this made me happy to watch it again. Really enjoyed it. It was better than I expected. So, solid 8
Solid
from me.
8. Yeah. So I'd also, and just for context, you would also given some of the other movies you liked an 8, like Roger Rabbit
Yeah, this is like lazy grading on my
and
part.
Adam Sandler. But I had written down an 8 too. It was absolutely a delight to watch again. It was not cringy in the parts that I thought it was going to be cringy. And if anything, I thought that some things landed even better to me that I thought was funnier. I mean, I guess I could pick it apart a little bit. Like I'd say it's an 8, but not higher because, the love story was just a little bit fast and just sort of like meh, like Lisa's like a meh character. So, I mean, and maybe it's slightly dated in some ways with all the floofiness, but those are like minor things. But yes, a solid 8. I am in agreement there. I think that's an 8. And for me, that's the highest rating that I've
That's the highest you've given any movie ever.
it
Nice.
is. It is. I really enjoy I mean, I think I'd watch this again like tomorrow. Like I really enjoyed it. The next thing is so that's a 16. So I think that might be of the highest that we've had so far. But so now we're gonna rate it for again, same scale, 1 to 10, 1 being garbage, 10 being Princess Bride for how it lives up to kids today or its intended audience. So this one was tricky for me because I think with the rated R rating with him meaning Eddie Murphy being on SNL and Arsenio Hall being on late night television, I guess this was targeted to adults, right?
Yeah, it had to be.
But yet we watched it as
It's
kids
a
like over
cult
and over.
classic for kids our age.
Whether that was a questionable thing, parents of the 80s or not, whatever, we're fine. We're fine.
I feel like a censored version of it was perfectly good for kids. I mean, it's a love story and they're not
Yeah.
treating anybody poorly. And, the main character, Prince Akeem, is sticking up for women and wanting to have a marriage where he treats his wife as an equal and saying
Yeah.
all that aloud. And there's nothing really like mean in this movie. And there's nothing really cringy other than the copious amounts of swearing.
Right. Which swearing's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
on some level.
And I mean the edited version, like if you could get a hold of that and it's got the nudity out of there and it's got the swearing turned into mother fathers, then
Yeah,
then I think it's okay for kids, but yeah.
yeah,
Heavily edited.
I mean, I definitely, I sound like some sort of like uptight person when I would definitely shut this movie off with my 5-year-old after 20 minutes. But
It's
I think it
fair.
was, as a parent, it was really because I don't want my kid to be the one saying this on the playground. And the funny thing is that I'm already terrible with this and curse a lot. And I even had over the summer or a year ago, a parent say, "Oh, my son used damn it," and he used it correctly, and I was wondering where on earth could have he has gotten it, and I'm like hiding my face, like obviously my son said, I
Just
know my son says it all the time
corrupting
because
children in the
I say it all the
playground.
time. So I'm already that parent amongst the community here, and I just felt like I just didn't need Isaac to go around saying what are sex with bathers kind of situation. Yeah, so in that regard, I think not that young, 5, 6,
No,
too young,
it's
too young.
R. It's rated R.
It's solidly R, but yeah, I think the intended audience is adults, but we watched as kids, so I want to put it as imagining either teenagers or young adults today. I mean, for me, this was a tricky rating because if I say adults, then I'm starting with an 8, right? But then it's like, well, I grew up with an affection for this movie. It's still a little bit dated. I don't think that parents will show this to their kids today in a
No.
way. So, and there's a little bit of like the clutchy pearls part to me. So I did knock it down to a 5, which might be too harsh. But I just imagine like a 19-year-old watching this today. And I think someone who loves comedy and the art of comedy will love it. But I'm not sure it's one that you're going to go to over and over again as like a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I landed on the exact same number.
No
I would
way.
say,
We're
do
the
not,
same.
we've never agreed before.
We have never
What?
agreed this hard before.
Um,
So what's your reasoning for a 5?
it's same thing as you. I would never show this to a child under 10 unless you can get that heavily edited version from way
Yeah.
back in the day on network television. You do have to be careful with some of the jokes being told here because the context has changed quite a bit.
That's true. That's
And
true.
also, certain lines are funny coming out of Eddie Murphy, but they're not going to be funny coming out of a kid on the playground.
Right.
So
Yeah.
fives all around for the kids.
5s for the kids. And I think of the kid, when I say kids, I also really think of like almost like a college student age as probably the target here.
Yeah.
But
Which they're sort of more adults. Over 18, yeah, you get an 8.
yeah. So this is the first time we've solidly agreed. I
I
mean, we've
know. This
definitely
is weird. What's
even when we
happening?
both like something, we haven't always agreed on this, on the actual scoring. So that is a first. We'll see if that holds up as the only.
This
But
is also the highest score you've ever given anything.
it is, it is. So what are we total? So we have 10, 16. So we're at
26.
26. Actually, I think the Addams Family scored one higher.
Ooh, right.
Yeah. So this is actually the second highest because the Addams Family, I think we really scored it fairly high for kids.
I leaned in on the Addams
Yeah,
Family.
which I would say that that's still true for this one. And really, I think it's because it's a low rating really because we probably had no business watching this as 10-year-olds, if you think
No.
about it. But we're better for it. It's fine. So this last, I think we know where we're going here. So the last question is whether it lives up. Like, does it overall live up regardless of score? So what is it?
Well, it actually surpassed my expectations. Yes, this definitely lived up. It was great.
It's a yes for me too. I even as an adult, I think I could watch this again, like in short order. I thought it was super fun. But
I love that we've already decided the sequel does not live up, having not watched it at all.
I know. I just watched the trailer. I actually watched the trailer like twice, and I was like, oh, it just yeah, but maybe we don't know what the fuck we're talking about, and it's actually really good. And I would love if a listener told us.
Call us out. We're being hypocrites.
Call us out. I actually really want to know, is the sequel good? Like, should we watch it? And, obviously we gushed on this one. So would love for folks to take a watch of this and let us know what they think. And you could let us know. So you could find us at Live Up Pod on all the socials, not the Tickety Talk yet, but all the rest of the socials. You can find us there. And if you want to shoot us a note at liveuppod@gmail.com. So thanks for listening. And, if you want to stick around, I'll have a little bit of a bonus of just what my brother's impressions and memory of this was without having rewatched it. So that'll be fun. We are reviewing Coming to America on the Live Up podcast. And as so many of our conversations go, we think about how we've watched the movie, how we came to love the movie, and who we watch the movie with is typically our siblings and friends. So to that end, knowing that I had watched Coming to America all the time as a kid, I've decided to talk to my brother to see what his memories are and how he feels about the movie and just what he thinks. So to that end, here is my brother.
Hello.
So this is Jeremy Latterman, brother of host me, Jess Latterman of the Live Up podcast. Okay, so Coming to America. I know that we watched this together as kids like a lot. So
must be at the million time, I would say, I guess.
A million. Can you set the scene of how you remember us watching?
It's funny, I don't specifically remember like watching the movie as much as I remember sitting in the den, and I remember that we watched it, but I can't, I guess, place watching this with you exactly, because in my head this kind of switches places with Trading Places a lot. So I'm not sure which memory is watching this movie, which memory is watching that movie.
I feel like we watched both of those movies around the same time.
Yeah, it was like our Eddie Murphy phase, I suppose.
Yeah. Would it surprise you to know that this movie is rated R?
Is it really? No, I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
I was actually, it's funny, in my head I was thinking, oh, that was a great movie. Can I like watch it with my kids? But sounds like I can't.
Well, just based on your memory, without me telling you
There's
that.
definitely things like I remember like the band Sexual Chocolate. Like but I kind of just assumed that it went over my head as a kid, and I didn't realize it was rated R.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. I'm not saying you shouldn't show it to your kids, but I did watch the first 20 minutes or so with Isaac, my son, who's 5. And and as I'm watching it, I was like, this really feels like not I mean, it's going over his head, but once they got to I don't know how much you remember about the early part when the king, otherwise known as James Earl Jones, is like, I just always assumed you had sex with your bathers.
Well, again, I would assume anything sexual would go over Isaac's head.
I didn't mean to get all pearl clutchy, but then I was like, let me just look to see, like, parent of the year here. And I'm like, oh no, it's rated R. But before I told you that, do you think you would have tried to watch it with your kids?
Probably would have, because I actually remember the scene you're talking about, and I remember it wasn't phrased. They didn't use the word sex. They said "sowing your wild oats" or something like that.
Yeah,
so
good memory.
I kind of assumed that would go over the kids' heads, because I mean I barely know what that means now, and I'm 41.
Yeah, I think so. Just so you know, both of those terms are in there. Not that we need to clutch our pearls over it. Yeah, no, I think we watched the first 20 minutes and then I was like, yeah, it's time to go to bed, Isaac. So I started to remember the rest of the movie and I thought maybe I shouldn't watch a rated R movie with an almost 6-year-old. But so I know it definitely surprised me that it was rated R. So, but obviously you and I would liked it a lot. So why do you think we liked the movie so much? Like, why did we choose it to watch over and over?
I mean, it was funny. Eddie Murphy's hysterical, and Arsenio Hall's hysterical. And I remember the scene at the bar when he's hitting on a bunch of women, and one of them's Arsenio Hall dressed in drag.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was funny.
What do you think of the movie? What is the first thing that comes to mind?
That it's funny, that I'd like to see it again because it's been a while, and I would have thought that I'd watch it with the kids. I think
you should and report back.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that now. But I can't picture scenes that there's certainly some ideas that'll go over their heads, and there's certain things that they wouldn't quite understand, and certain things I wouldn't want them to repeat. But I wouldn't think I'd hesitate to watch it with the kids.
Yeah.
I'm not going to now, though.
I think I ruined it. I think I should have just let you watch it with the kids, which I don't think it would have been the end of the world. I mean,
I
certainly
probably would have
you
done
were,
what you did, clutched my pearls and shut it off at some point.
and I wasn't watching it with Lily, who's now 11, but we were younger than that when we watched this.
Probably,
So,
yeah.
do you remember picking up any satire when you watched it as a kid? When we watched it together?
The whole soul glow thing.
The whole soul glow thing, but it's actually kind of funny and still lands. I
I
thought
guess
it
I'd
was
have
going
to
to be
re-see.
cringe, and it didn't hit cringe for me. Does the Queens in the movie, in your mind, hold up to your view of Queens today?
Boy, that's a good question. I would think no, because I mean, I'm in Queens almost every day now, and
You don't see a McDowell's?
I don't. No, it was more. I feel like the movie was more suburban almost. I
Yeah.
guess there was a scene in the subway. I think
Yeah, there was.
she
You
gave away
remember
her earrings or
actually?
something.
Yes. Yes, when he basically at the end, when Hakeem slash Eddie Murphy is chasing after Lisa finds out that he's really a prince, and she's pissed. And she gives him those expensive earrings back that he had given her as like an anonymous gift.
Right. And he gives it to a stranger, I think.
Yeah, that's right. He does.
And then she says something about being single, I think, or something like that. I don't know. It's been a long time.
Yeah, no, you're remembering a lot more, I think, than I did. Do you think you're going to go back and rewatch this movie?
Yes, but I am not going to watch it with the kids. I'm
I
going to
think
give it
you
a pass
should.
through first. Just to vet it for them first.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. I'm glad I watched this as a kid. Obviously, I mean, I'm glad that our parents didn't clutch their pearls over this, but I was shocked when I saw the rating and then
So
watching it again. I
let
was
me
like,
ask
oh,
you a
wow, there's a
question.
lot.
What
Yeah.
scene made you, clutch your pearls and turn the movie off?
Oh, God, good question. It wasn't a specific scene that made me clutch my pearls. It was more like it was adding up as I was watching it with Isaac, again, almost 6-year-old.
What did he think about that? He probably was like, no, I want to watch.
Yeah, when you first watch something you haven't seen in a while, and then it triggers your cascade of memories, and the whole movie could just like play before you, then you remember things. So after the whole, I thought you already had sex with your bathers and sowing your royal oats, and they were on their way to New York, I decided that, you know what? I think there's going to be a lot here that I don't remember I might not want my 6-year-old to repeat this on the playground.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm hesitant. Like, I trust my kids to watch it. I wouldn't trust them not to repeat it.
Well, thank you for jogging my memory, and I hope I jogged some of your memory, at least enough to rewatch the movie.
Definitely did.
With or without your children. Your call.